Around the NFL podcast. Make way for my man coming through.
Welcome to another edition of the Around the NFL podcast. My name is Dan Hansis. I'm coming to you from a city filled with heroes in bunkers. Mark Sessler, Chris Wessling, Greg Rosenthal. What is up, boys?
Hey, Dan.
Of course, the iconic quote right there, Mark Sessler at the 2020 NFL Scouting Combine, making room for the coronavirus-ridden Sean Payton.
Well, we didn't know at that time at all what was going on with Sean Payton, and
he didn't have it then. He didn't have it then.
We don't know.
That's unclear, Dr. Rosenthal. We don't. That is unconfirmed. But I've never tested myself for it, but I'm symptom free if I have it roaming inside my bloodstream at the moment.
You can get the antibody test, perhaps, Mark, if you want to make sure that Sean Payton didn't do you wrong there. Wouldn't have been Sean Payton's fault, but yeah.
No, I wouldn't have blamed him directly.
Certainly
they got tests for anyone in LA if you want it, Mark. You just got to sign up online. Go for it.
In retrospect, because everyone got caught, excuse the term, with their pants down when it comes to COVID-19, if the NFL or the world knew what was coming, the Scouting Combine would have never happened either, and that was quite a hotbed of activity in Indianapolis. And now you look where we are now, still in the bunkers.
Had an unnamed friend who wouldn't shake hands or want to hug at a dinner event, and at the time seemed like it was a little much. And look at him; he was ahead of the game.
Ridiculed him.
He knew.
At the time.
No, we didn't say anything. I didn't.
I also remember
you called him a fool and threw wine in his face.
You weren't even there.
There was also a lunchtime meeting where Greg. This was probably 10, 14 days before the stuff hit the fan, and Greg kind of dismissed coronavirus as a petty little illness that would float away by June or July as the sun warmed up over LA.
That is not true at all.
I don't know. Am I that far?
I remember your thought of that.
I feel like there was a comment, Greg, you made that this was going to really stick it to capitalism. Like you were saying, capitalism was overdue to take a shot to the gut. And
well, unfortunately.
So maybe you had some good takes mixed in as well.
I don't know if that's a good take. I don't like that being out there at all.
Yeah, it's tough. Happy belated Mother's Day to all the mothers. We joke around that it is a male-dominated audience for the show, and it certainly is, let's be honest. But a few weeks back when I did that little exercise on DM, spurned on by Mark's Truth or Dare segment on this podcast, there was, as it turned out, when I went through all of them, there's a bunch of women that listen to the show, and so all of you women who are moms.
Many of them mothers.
Happy Mother's Day.
That's not necessarily representative. Like I'm going to open my DMs and come at me. I mean, you were looking to get – I see what you were doing. You were fishing.
Yeah. And with that said, I do got my guitar here. I'm going to do a little Daughters by John Mayer. Father – no, I'm not.
Thank God.
I would have believed it. I would have believed it.
Get a few Tito's in you. You will do that.
All right. This is the Monday edition of the Around the NFL podcast. I hope everyone checked out the Around the NFL broadcast, our NFL Network show, which returned on Friday, and it will be back on the airwaves again this Friday, and hopefully each Friday for the foreseeable future. Now, are we on the air when and if the season begins? We'll find out, Greg. Are we more like a plug-and-play desperation scenario here, or are we part of the network schedule going forward? We're going to find out, and the listeners and viewers will find out as well.
Are we desperate filler? TBD.
I mean, it only took a pandemic to get us on, but we're happy for it. It's like anything right now. They're just playing it by ear. It's week to week. They can change their minds.
Indefinite, like an usual Josh Gordon suspension. You never know what could happen.
We are the Josh Gordon of the NFL Network schedule right now, but we're happy for the opportunity. So check it out this upcoming Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, the Around the NFL broadcast. Coming up on today's show, we're going to just get caught up. We haven't had a podcast since Wednesday, so we're going to check in on the schedule release, which dropped late last week. We're going to check in with Mark Sessler, who wrote a banger. Mark, I read it. I really enjoyed the prose, as always. And we're going to dig into your teams with a chip on their shoulder entering 2020.
Right. I would label that a scientific study, if nothing else.
But before that, let's do some news.
Oh my God. Should have known.
Mark and I have a long-standing tradition of occasionally sending each other old commercials that aired in the Northeast in the early to mid-'90s, and that was a Stetson cologne ad that ran excessively. I don't know if that rang a bell, Greg, up there in New England, West.
Yeah. Oh, I recognize that
Cincinnati. Oh, yeah.
Definitely, and that was one of the colognes my dad had in the cabinet. Stetson, Little Brute by Fabergé.
Got a lot of NFL play, if I'm not mistaken, back in the day. I mean, to the point
NFL
where,
play.
yeah, I had friends and I where that choral chime at the beginning. We would walk around. My brother and I would sing that to each other, playing Legos. My friends and I would walk down the high school hallways singing that, like groups of 7 or 8. I mean, it really registered for some reason. So.
It aired regularly during commercial breaks of WWF programming in the early 90s also.
Yes.
And I was just talking about it with Mark before the show. If you break down the lyrical content, first of all, it's a very pure female choir, and the lyrics are Stetson makes it easy for you. So basically it's about scoring with chicks, but it's coming from this like church choir. It's a bit of jarring in retrospect.
Yes.
Doesn't it sound like the background vocalist in Rolling Stones? You can't always get what you want.
It might
could
even
be.
one and the same. All right, let's get to the news, starting with a bizarre incident involving Earl Thomas of the Baltimore Ravens. I know a lot of people had their jokes on Twitter regarding the situation, but it was quite serious when you read into it that Earl Thomas was involved in some type of escapade with a woman. His brother was also involved, and then Earl Thomas's wife caught wind of it. This is all from a police report. This is not speculative reporting. And she barged into the house with a firearm, and it led to essentially a standoff. The safety was off on the gun. All this like really dangerous, scary stuff where what's a kind of quote-unquote funny internet story could have turned into a huge tragedy. But as it turns out, Earl Thomas wasn't arrested or charged. His wife, a different situation. And the Ravens said they became aware of the Earl Thomas situation on Wednesday night when TMZ reported the incident. And this could have, Greg, some actual big-time ramifications for Earl Thomas, a man who fought very hard to get the big contract he felt he deserved from Seattle, didn't get it from them, and got one from the Ravens.
Yeah, I immediately thought, it's different because obviously his wife's involved, but is this something that could affect his employment? And Pro Football Talk reported on it, or Baltimore Sun rather reported on it, that the Ravens looked into whether he could void the contract. And then Pro Football Talk, Mike Florio, my old boss, followed up with a report saying they can't do anything with this contract related to it, that the people high up in Baltimore knew that. And, Mike essentially intimated that maybe if they could do something about his contract, they would look into it. But that since there's nothing they can do, they expect nothing to come from it, and that he'll be a member of the team this season.
I thought it was interesting that there was some side reporting too that the Ravens weren't totally thrilled with aspects of the Earl Thomas experience last year. Someone mentioned that he didn't totally buy into the team concept at times, and that he kind of struggled to grasp the defense, which annoyed some of his teammates. I don't know to what degree, but I mean, the vibe of the voiding the contract suggested to me that the Ravens would like to, but cannot.
What were the analytics of Earl Thomas, the advanced analytics last year? And what did you guys see on tape? Was he still Earl Thomas?
He struggled early. We talked about it on the show that he lost foot speed a couple of steps. But as he got to know the defense, and as they changed their defense to be more back-end heavy with a lot more defensive backs, that defense really gelled from the second half of the season on. And it surprised me that they weren't happy with him because that secondary played so well and was the strength of that defense down the stretch.
He changed his role a lot. His towards the end, and Chris is absolutely right. It seemed like he started slow, and then he was part of one of the best groups in the league. He wasn't necessarily that deep center Earl Thomas safety trying to read the quarterback's mind. It was a lot about run support and rushing the quarterback and a guy near the line of scrimmage, so they found a different way to use him, but it seemed like he was helping them. And yeah, PFF had him as a top 30 safety, which is good, not quite the Earl Thomas of old.
I mean, unfortunately, the last visual that we have of him is Derrick Henry just blowing him up into another hemisphere.
Good point.
Yeah, true. Thomas will turn 31 this week on Thursday. 4-year, $55 million contract with the Ravens. And, God, yeah, crazy stuff. A gun held to his head. Moving on. The Saints have made a move that many people expected, moving on from guard Larry Warford. This comes after they drafted a young prospect last month, or was it this month? What month is it? What year are we in right now?
It's last month now. It is last month.
Okay. Anyway, they drafted Cesar Ruiz, who was interior lineman, first-round pick invested, so it seemed like Warford, with a bloated salary, would be squeezed out, and sure enough, he was. He turns 29 next month, Wes. This seems like a guy who not only will get a job, but could end up starting because he wasn't terrible last year.
No, he wasn't terrible, and sometimes we get caught up in the rumor mill that ever since they drafted Ruiz, this move was expected, and got me thinking that maybe Larry Warford was past his prime and just fell off a cliff and is no good anymore. PFF graded him slightly below average, and teams seem to be lining up to sign him now. I'm not sure he earned that Pro Bowl berth last year, but there will be interest in him.
Basically hasn't missed a snap in 5 years as a starter on the best or one of the best offensive lines in football. This is one of those moves where, maybe there's something else going on behind the scenes, whether he fit in or I don't even know. But it absolutely is a money move. There are very few, usually I just think, well, it's more about they don't want the player. In this case, they drafted someone and they free up $10 million where they were having to move things around for every little move that they make, and that helps them in this regard.
In other news, Mike Glennon has got a new job. He is signed with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Glennon spent last season with the Raiders. He threw 10 passes last season and 2 appearances with the team. Gardner Minshew, Mark Sessler. Good news for him because Glennon is not anybody that you would think the franchise is going to think, ooh, we got to get a look at this dude. They're going to ride with the kid.
Yeah, I guess you could have, initially it was a landing spot for Andy Dalton. You could suggest that Cam Newton could probably go there and steal a lot of starts away if the offense fell off a cliff. I mean, guys like Joe Flacco are out there, Trevor Siemian, and so this to me, it's they sort of said all along,
Geno
we
Smith.
believe. Yes, Geno. Sorry to omit that name. They believe in Gardner Minshew, at least giving him a full year to see what happens. I just don't love the situation for Gardner Minshew, and I hope he doesn't get, there's a lot of quarterbacks in the draft next year in one of these scenarios where, in a handicapped offense, he's blamed for it.
Our old buddy Michael Lombardi saw this move. I think it was when he tweeted this out and just said it's
old
official.
Buddy?
Yeah,
Old
oh
buddy.
yeah. We used to be colleagues. We're us and Lombardi.
What a joy that was.
Especially you guys, writing up his copy. I've heard that story a few times.
What a treasure.
And he tweeted out right after this, it's official, they're tanking. And I don't think the coaching, we've been through this with the Dolphins. I don't think the coaching staff is trying to lose, but yada, yada. Is there a team, running the Jaguars high up that might be thinking, well, worst case scenario, if we lose, we're in a good spot next year? That doesn't seem that crazy to me. That they would hold on to Marrone and Caldwell for one more year, because why blow it up and start over when we might just not be ready to really compete this year?
The football world has lost its grip on the concept of tanking. Just completely lost touch with what it actually is. Nobody has any idea anymore. Teams did this all the time before the Dolphins last year, what the Jacksonville Jaguars are doing. They've signed 8 veteran free agents this offseason. That's not what a tanking team does. They had a huge draft. I just, what do you mean they're tanking? They're just not good. They're rebuilding.
Well, if you have Mike Glennon, who I don't think anybody thinks can play at this level, at least at a starter level. Although, has he ever really been given the chance? I'm not sure.
Oh yeah, I mean, he won some games. He won some games with the Bucks.
How many games did he start? Did he start a full season?
He started more than half of the season in Tampa, didn't he? And then he started more games in a different season.
I mean,
and then
Wes
the Bears
and I were
signed him to a
writing-
huge contract.
Right, we were writing Mike Glennon fantasy. Team X wants to trade for intriguing Mike Glennon back in like 2014 mid-decade. So I mean,
he's officially 6-16 as a starter. He played He played 13 games for the Bucks one year as an injury replacement.
So here's the Lombardi tank theory. Mike Glennon, we have evidence. He's been in the league for a while now. He can't really play. If Minshew stinks and he was a flash in the pan, they have no quarterback to keep them above water, and they can very quickly become one of those 3-13, 2-14 outfits. Now,
yeah, that's what like 7 teams a year have done for the last 75 years. What are you talking about?
I'm with Wes.
Tanking?
It's probably
tanking.
just the wrong word. They're like rebuilding and with a young team, and they probably have their eyes wide open that they're not likely to be a playoff team this year. But that doesn't mean they're tanking.
Did the Dolphins tank last year? The team didn't. I think the front office did last year. I think that was accurate.
There was like legit reporting from well beforehand that was a concept they were, considering. And I think that it's unfair to ask a coaching staff to play along with that. And the Dolphins coaching staff utterly refused the notion of it.
It does suggest that the state of quarterbacking is entirely different than it was 5 years ago when Mark and I were writing these articles about some unknown quarterback in Tampa who was a third-round pick and might be the savior for other teams, and now Cam Newton can't get a job.
All right. In other news, the shoe is finally dropped over at ESPN. Richard Deitch of TheAthletic.com reports that Joe Tessitore and Booger McFarland will not be back on Monday Night Football. Da-da-da-da-da. Dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dum. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Wow, were you adding some lyrics to that jingle? I thought I heard words there.
Yeah. Deitch adds that the replacements will come from within ESPN. Decisions have not been made on that part, but Tess and Booger are not out at the company. They will remain in, quote, prominent roles at ESPN. Just did not work out over 2 years for Tess and Booger. They put McFarland in the Boogermobile, which is one of the infamous follies in the history of NFL broadcast television. I mean, that will be remembered forever as one of like the great gaffes. Just how silly it looked, and the man was wearing a seatbelt calling a football game. And Jason
unfairly
Jason
so.
Upstairs.
I mean, the Boogermobile was not nearly as bad as just hiring Jason Witten, but it's not as funny.
Yes, well, yeah, I don't want to overshadow that. Jason Witten was that 2018 setup is the worst ever because Witten, despite good intentions, was completely overwhelmed and not ready for the job. He was green. He didn't have the it factor. Tessitore rubbed people the wrong way with some of his histrionics. And then Booger's wearing a seatbelt on the sideline, going 15 miles an hour up and down the field. I mean, what are we doing here? Anyway, they tried to rein it back in last year. Witten, the Cowboys gave them a nice out by signing Witten back into the league. And then they went two-man booth, brought Booger upstairs, threw the Boogermobile into the ocean. But the two, it just didn't work. So we'll find out. I know our friend Andrew Marchand of the New York Post floated some internal names, including, who was it? Do you guys recall?
Steve Levy, Dan Orlovsky, Louis Riddick. I heard Brian Greasy.
All in the mix potentially, so we'll find out. But there will not be no Peyton Manning, no Tony Romo, no Al Michaels. And we'll see. We'll find out.
Kurt Warner's been thrown in the mix, too, and Nate Burleson as two guys they looked at from the outside. But it sounds like they're more leaning on just staying internal.
Right, exactly. And your boy Mike Florio, Greg, who, by the way, he's filing stuff. This caught my eye over the weekend. Florio's filing stuff at 4:08 p.m. on a Saturday, May 9th. He just does it all the time, huh?
Yeah.
How does that work? Is he just doesn't? He never.
It's one of the reasons I wanted to leave ultimately because
I mean I respected it in a way, but
I totally respected it,
violence.
But there were no days off, like literally. It was a 7-day-a-week operation, and with kids that was tricky. And like if the boss is doing that, then you're expected to do that too. So I don't know. What else is he gonna do? He's in West Virginia in quarantine.
That's true.
That doesn't explain the other 10 years of that, but
well, that's
yes,
true. I don't know. He loves it.
It's a grinder.
And I mentioned Florio because he does mention at the end of a post that he wrote about this that the change, whatever ends up being the booth, could be temporary. There are rumors that the next deal for Monday Night Football, which starts in a couple of years, the game could move back to ABC from ESPN. And if it moves back to broadcast television, will they again load up looking for big-time name talent? We shall see.
I thought it was interesting. I know we're going to get to the schedule in a second, but it related to Monday Night Football. They got a better schedule this year. Not only did they get Ravens Chiefs, they got some big-time games, and that's the biggest game of the season, and they got it, Ravens Chiefs.
Ooh, great segue, Greg. Let us check in on the schedule release. It rolled out Thursday evening. It's our first chance to talk about it on this show. We talked about it in pretty good detail around the NFL broadcast and NFL Network. But what was a big takeaway for you, Greg, from the schedule, if any? It is kind of the last big rollout of the league that they had control of. They rolled it out on schedule, but we all know changes could come.
A few things. One, they're doing a Friday Christmas game, Saints-Vikings rematch.
You love it.
It's interesting. I mean, yeah, I think it's fun.
A little bit of
I don't think it's
food
great. No, I don't
and,
love it because I like spending the day completely with my family. But it's
a little
interesting.
bit of a middle finger to the NBA, though. I
Yeah.
mean, that's been the NBA's breakout day for a long time.
Well,
But
part of it
we'll
that's
see. Does it
interesting to
clash?
me is that it's
Scheduling?
right before a Saturday full of NFL games too. So it's not it's Christmas and then it's like a triple header probably on Saturday and then Sunday. So I'm just thinking that's week 16, which to me is kind of the biggest regular season week where it decides so much. And so that
It's a
that caught
primetime
my
game?
eye. Yeah, I think it's 6:30 Eastern, so it's sort of in between.
I think that conflicts with the ESPN.
No, it is.
I mean, the NBA.
I read that
is,
it clashed
yeah.
with the second half of one of their games or something.
It is, yeah.
Wow. What a shot across the bow.
Well, I mean-
your move, Adam Silver. There's only so much I can care. Oh, speaking of which, any other? How about you, Wes? You got any schedule takeaways? I know you have to. Give me one.
I'm thinking. People put way too much stock in strength of schedule in May. It doesn't mean anything.
course.
That's my takeaway. None of this strength of schedule stuff means anything. Week one wipes everything out.
I want Peter Kay had one good point that that it was, and it makes sense that it was by leaps and bounds, because I think creating this, you got to go into that war room with like 88 people and 4,000 charts and deal with concerts and live events and all this other nonsense that's on the slate for autumn. But none of that exists right now, and they said it was the easiest schedule to make by such a large degree, and also that Dan, our Browns and Jets play in Week 16 in New York, but what happens there is the Browns play the Giants the week before, and there's a lot of instances where I think they're trying to, if travel's going to be involved and we're going to do this, that teams going to the West Coast might be there 2 or 3 weeks in a row or vice versa to, prevent unnecessary zigzagging across the country.
Yeah, that's true. Greg, you love the Thanksgiving schedule. You love chopping it up. 11:26:20.
Yeah.
12:30 p.m. Texans at Lions. 1:30 p.m. Redskins at Cowboys, and then primetime the Ravens show up again against the Steelers.
I'm into that.
20.
That slate's okay, but I do have takeaways from it. One, they gave Deshaun Watson some big pop in this schedule. They're in primetime a lot, but they're also they're in the kickoff game. That's a big nod to Deshaun Watson, and they're in Thanksgiving. So it's kind of putting some faith in the star power of Watson and Bill O'Brien. And that is the only national game of the year that the Redskins are in. What a fall from grace from that franchise.
Wow.
There's been some good Thanksgiving ones, and that is it. They don't have a single primetime game.
That's a bit overdue, let's be honest.
Right.
Can't just keep pumping that organization into primetime until they're interesting. And then finally, I wrote a revenge games piece. I'm going to cycle through these. I think we might get Wes fired up on one of these. Here we go. Week 12, Carson Wentz against the Seahawks. Week 6, Mark, Myles Garrett, Pittsburgh Steelers.
Which they essentially put in an anonymous early slate time spot. I think they don't want to pump that up as much as you choose to at the moment.
They cut down the Browns' prime time.
Yeah, as they should
considerably,
have.
right?
As
What
they
is it?
should have. They got 2, and they don't deserve more than 2.
Okay, I wonder if the Garrett thing has anything to do with that.
I don't think so. I think
organization.
I don't think so. I mean, I'm more appalled that the Saints have fewer primetime games than 8 other teams.
Odell Beckham Jr. plays the Giants for the first time in Week 15. The Chargers against Tom Brady. Tom Brady was,
That's
courted by the
revenge?
Chargers.
The Bucks
the
have
Chargers
more.
wants a little bit of revenge. You don't want to come to us? Here's our boy.
I mean, Dan,
the
you
kid.
wrote that. You seem puzzled by your own entry there.
I don't know, man. There's a pandemic going on there. Packers, Niners, Dolphins, Patriots, Texans, Chiefs, Titans, Ravens, Vikings, Saints. All great revenge matchups. And now we just wait to see if any of it happens. And that's what's happening in the news. All right, Mark. Did you write a banger? Sub-banger? Actual banger? Where you at?
The weird NFL article because it was due. You get these monthly. You look ahead for the month, and here's what you're going to write, and here's when they're due. I noticed, and this got on my radar a while ago. Due Monday morning at 7 a.m. Okay, so that means I'm going to be right. That means I'm going to be writing that. I wrote it on a Saturday morning, in our, in my backyard. And
the Sunday is Mother's Day.
Right. So I knew that I was dealing with a strict window to churn this text out. But I had kind of enjoyed writing it because it wasn't one of these ones where you have to dig in and look at, PFF and all this other stuff for 4 hours in a row. It was just kind of like pick some teams that seem like they might be a little on edge or feel a little dismissed by people. And I guess to me that would equal having a chip on your shoulder as a franchise.
All right, so you started with the New England Patriots. Why?
Well, my first words there were Belichick lives. I just think that it's funny to me that, we have no idea how any of this will go. They're fascinating to me because anyone ticketing them for 5-11, fine, that's a reasonably logical outcome because of what's gone. But I still think you have the best coach in football who, yes, I realize he's, trotting around with his little dog and doing these nice segments. But I would imagine
70 years old.
Right. I would imagine behind the scenes that Belichick would like nothing more than to take whoever's starting at quarterback and just stick it to the rest of the league. They have, I think, 5 primetime games, and, it's fair to think they could be disasters, but I think the opposite.
On that note, you said stick it. Reminded me of Jared Stidham. Great. Wes, you read something in the Boston Sports Journal, a Greg Bedard joint, where he essentially dug in a little bit on where Stidham actually stands with the Patriots right now. And your takeaway is that a lot of people have this all wrong about what's actually going on at the quarterback position there.
The entire football cognoscenti has been misreading this quarterback situation for 3 months. Greg Bedard has sources who told him the Patriots view Jared Stidham as another year away, as not ready, as basically as ready as Jimmy Garoppolo was after one season, which means they just need to see a lot more before they can determine that he's the guy. And Belichick's comments have backed this up, that our quarterback room of Brian Hoyer and Jared Stidham is not by design. That's just the way it's played out. Who knows if Jared Stidham can play? I just think this idea, we all think that the Belichick persona now is he's so sneaky, he's got everything figured out, and he's always waiting to drop some surprise on the NFL. And I don't think that's what this is. I think they just haven't found a quarterback that suits them so far. Andy Dalton was making too much money. Maybe they don't think he's a major upgrade. I don't know why. Greg might have info on whether they like Cam Newton or not.
Andy Dalton's making too much money?
Well, when the Bengals were trying to trade him.
I mean,
right, but he was a free agent.
From an action standpoint, I get by design they don't just think this is what it would be, Hoyer and Stidham, but what's the action item to add someone here in May? There were plenty of options.
Right. I agree with everything Wes said. And I think that's how weirdly a lot of times people say, okay, Belichick's got all this master plan, and here's how I think he is a very in the moment, reactive, doing the best decision that he thinks for the team. It's like I don't think this was part of their long-term plan. I think they wanted Tom Brady back on some level, and he wanted to go. I mean, I think, or at least they were caught a little flat foot. Yeah, I know. I'm just saying, like, they didn't necessarily think he was going to have a strong market, and they almost were right there, but not right enough. I think they like Stidham. and they like him more than Andy Dalton, or else they would have found a way to sign Andy Dalton. Salary cap is significant here. It's also, the season hasn't started. They could add someone. The only thing I think that's clear, though, is Stidham did beat out Hoyer last year. They got rid of Hoyer because of Stidham's performance in training camp. So that was something now you did that with Tom Brady being the starter, but they still made that decision. So I just don't see Hoyer having a very good chance at winning the job if it's between the two of them.
If this is true that internally they don't think Jarrett Stidham is going to be ready for at least another year.
Well, it was more that they don't know that. Like, how could they know that he's played a year? They liked where he was at, but he's a young player.
Just the risk of it all, though, that if you're the football czar / GM as Belichick, your principal job is to have the team prepared roster-wise, and then the coach side of it takes over after that. But there certainly seems like a very real chance, because who thinks Brian Hoyer can really lead anything at this stage of the game, that they'll be completely caught with their pants down. And then you get into the whole theory. I can't believe I said pants down again in the show. Then you get into the theory that would Belichick be kind of cool with it if they ended up being terrible, because maybe that leads to their quarterback of the future, and he is looking 2 steps or 2 paces ahead, as many people often assume he is.
I think he's going to adapt, and he thinks once he gets into the season and he sees what Stidham has or doesn't, like, he thinks there's other ways to win games, and that's how he's operated. I think he looks at his offensive line as a total strength. I think he likes his running backs. I think he loves his secondary, and I think there's things he likes about the team, and he's going to try to play to those strengths. But you got to see if Stidham can play or not. Like, if he just can't, then you might have to go with Hoyer.
It's also May, and we may not play football until November.
Right.
I mean, who knows? So I don't think that the quarterback room now is the same as it's going to be by the time the season starts.
Well, he's also in Nantucket. I do wonder, like, he's been in this football grind. I've thought about this, like, which teams are going to benefit, and it's hard to really know. But, I mean, it's a totally different offseason for all these coaches, too. It's like he's just in Nantucket, like, cooking up who knows what. Are they going to be totally different than, like, are a lot of teams going to be totally different from because these coaches are in their bunkers just coming up with crazy ideas? That would be fun.
Is there a Nantucket Martha's Vineyard rivalry up there? Speak to it, please.
I don't think so. I've never been.
What, like elites on elites? How
Right.
does this work?
Right.
I mean,
That's what I'm
Nantucket's like a
asking.
really
Is there some
small
bad
place.
blood?
I don't know how you get.
Blue blood.
Yeah, I don't know how you get there. Martha's Vineyard's got like 100,000 people or 75, 80,000 people in the summer. I don't think like Nantucket has much in the way of even stores and stuff, but I don't really know. I think they've got some stores. It's just, not like not a ton.
Advantage Martha.
The Vineyard also has the Kennedys, right? I feel like that's some.
No, neither. They're on Cape Cod.
Well, let's bring in Ricky on this. Ricky,
Yeah,
you
they're in
are
Cape
a
Cod.
blue blood up there.
Of course.
You come from an incredible amount of wealth. Tell us more.
Well, that's,
I know Erica's
that's
like
not
the
true.
only
It's
one
not
of us
totally
who
false.
truly is a blue blood, and she never gets any. grief
Erica's
from it.
told us stories of sitting on the lap of Ted Williams and other great history
Luminaries.
figures.
Right,
up
and
there.
frankly, I thought he was inappropriate, but
Oh, stop that. No, Nantucket is the bomb. There's a ton of ferries, even from Martha's Vineyard to Nantucket.
okay, I've never been.
Greg.
I don't know.
And the downtown
Never.
is so historic and beautiful. Nantucket over Martha's Vineyard any day.
Wow, Ricky
Nantucket
coming
for
in
the
with some
win.
info.
Some takes.
That downtown with the cobblestone streets, I know Martha's Vineyard has a lot. They're very similar, but Nantucket, you wear your Nantucket Reds. You're just on the boat, shark fishing, whatever. I mean, Nantucket.
All right,
Nantucket.
bye.
Sniping a shark
Yeah.
from the top of the deck.
That was good info.
Yeah, that's
Was
our street smart correspondent, Erica Tamposi. All right. Who else? Mark, you have the entire AFC North has a chip on their shoulder. Now, talk this one out for me.
It's a big chip.
Well, that's how you do these
they
articles.
share it?
You,
Do they
you
share
can't
it?
just you know how this works. You can't just pick 6 teams. One of them has to be a little bit different and kind of like.
But
oh,
Mark,
that
Greg
kinda
has a
threw me
good
for-
point. Is it one giant chip collectively on the division itself, or do they have 4 separate chips?
Yeah, I think the imagery was troubling. I mean, kind of a tough imagery to begin with. I've gotten a lot of tweets like a team doesn't have a shoulder, blah blah blah. So it's like I hear what you're saying.
Wonderful sweets.
But I would say, if you're the Cleveland Browns, you have a chip on your shoulder because of everything we've talked about, over talked about on the show with what happened last year. I think they were embarrassed, and they have a lot to prove that you can't go out and do that again. And I would say there have to be some fairly angry individuals in there. Steelers, I mean, they went 8-8. They lost every quarterback possible. Things couldn't have gone any worse for them, and they still see themselves completely as a playoff team. I would say the Ravens, for the way the season ended, it's not that they were. That's 2 years in a row where the playoffs equaled a shocking departure for Baltimore, but especially last year. I mean, they just got totally punked in the weirdest way. I still feel like that playoff game was one of the weirder experiences I've had in a while, watching a game and just feeling like everything that you didn't expect is happening right in front of our eyes. I
believe
in
it was
Baltimore.
28-12. It was never really in question. The Titans were in control of the game from the very beginning. There was the insane stat, speaking to the weirdness of the game. I believe the Ravens got stopped on 4th and short 3 times, something that had not happened once in 16 games over their 14-2 campaign. So it was. Now, is it fluky? I'll pull it back. I don't know about the entire team, but I certainly could see Lamar Jackson having a chip on his shoulder, which you usually don't get from an MVP, because fairly or unfairly, a lot of people are going to remember that season for, oh yeah, he was this amazing dominant player, rushed for 1,200 yards and threw for 3,500 yards, whatever it was. And then, again, 2 straight playoff years, he didn't get it done. He needs to kind of lose that quote-unquote narrative, which might have been unfair in the first
Peyton
place.
Manning had that tracking him for a while in his career. And one thing I noted in an overly long intro to this thing was that I don't think that certain players would even care about this, no matter what team they're on. It's the certain type of guys. And you look at how Bill Parcells knew how to rile up Lawrence Taylor 5 minutes before kickoff and deal with another player completely differently. So, you can't just slap this label on entire teams or, frankly, an entire division. But I think the Bengals might be
Stay strong, Mark. Don't back down.
No, but the Bengals,
They could use a little chip. I mean, I don't know. Zach Taylor doesn't strike me.
Give him a couple chips.
Again, I'm not. I have quite.
Give him a
Wes and I
bag of
talked
chips.
about. We have questions about the coaching staff, but maybe I would go Bengals fans who I think have just taken it. For years, and they've been a laughing stock. The team doesn't seem to want to do much to get them out of that situation. So, things got to change here for the fan base.
Totally. Throw one more out there, Mark.
Let me look here.
That Ravens Titans game, by the way, it's one of 3 games on my DVR, and Walker just my son likes to watch football sometimes, so I've seen that game now a handful of times. It's Bills Patriots Week 15 and the Super Bowl from last year. So I've seen these games over a decent amount of times. That game was
incoming.
I'm just saying it's like an amazing football game. That was like that Titans body rock. There's something about a divisional round game like that, and it's fascinating to watch. Like, they just hit them, and the Ravens didn't know what had happened. It was like an amazing thing to rewatch.
Imagine going to that game as a Ravens fan.
Oh,
You think you got a ticket punched to the Super Bowl, and you're walking home like, wait, did we just score 12 points and essentially get our butts whipped?
that's when they would rather have the old Mouser.
Need the old Mouser in that spot.
I mean, when Tannehill hits Khalif Raymond on that bomb and it's suddenly 13-0, that was one of the moments of the season, I feel like.
Hello, Candy. It's Monday Mower Day.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I can hear that.
The
I
great
thought that was an
Candelario
airplane, actually.
rolls through here.
Who?
Candelario.
Like John Candelario?
Well, it's his first name. He's a good guy. I give him a handle of Captain Morgan's for Christmas every year. He comes and cuts the grass. He tends to the yard for us.
Nice. What a classy gesture.
Right. And for those who think that's some type of sign of me being an upper crust person, that's fairly normal if you rent a house in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys.
I think it's
nice
almost
gesture.
it's very normal. Yeah, it's part of rental agreements in the LA area that the owners have to take care of it.
Yeah, I don't know if I would want him swilling Captain Morgan's before cutting the lawn, but who knows? I feel like you could do that with a little bit
I
of
mean, it's not that hard.
juice in you.
Not upper crust. Going back to my mailman days, I appreciated anyone who would leave a tip in the mailbox or give you a gift certificate. I never got a handle of Captain Morgan's, though.
Yeah, I gave him a handle of Captain Morgan's and a half a rock.
Nice.
$50 is the.
Oh, I was like, you gave him cocaine? I was like, sort of thinking.
Like, it seems to fit right
It's
in.
LA.
Well, thank you. And then we have a drink.
There you go.
And well, what do you talk about? That would be more digging into
Gandhi?
where you see yourself with.
There's a bit of a language barrier, but we talk baseball. He's a Dodgers fan. You asked me about the
Perfect.
Yankees. Yeah, it works out. All right. Anything else?
I don't know. This does not feel like I'm trying to remember a segment that was interrupted by 2 or 3 like super deep dives into
you were
other
searching
topics,
for a team to
talk
about. I thought we
how
all
about
had
the
to come
Rams?
up with teams.
How about
Oh,
the
do you
Rams?
have one? Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
someone
One
else
more,
come up with
Mark.
one.
Okay, Greg, go ahead.
Well, I don't
Give us
know.
one.
Well, mine was on Mark's list, which was the Saints. Just that,
Yeah.
just like a team that's been a top 5 team in the NFL 3 straight years, as heartbreaking playoff losses as humanly possible, and is as all in like one last year as any roster I can think of for a long time. So that's a chip on your shoulder. It's also a lot of pressure. But when you look at what Mickey Loomis has done with his financial jujitsu, keeping this team together, and the depth chart at every position looks awesome. I mean,
Balancing both an NBA team and an NFL team, Mark?
I've always thought that was, he's done a great job with that, with those dual responsibilities.
they got to be coming into this season feeling like it's title or bust, which is dangerous, but that's just where they're at.
Doesn't it feel like that's been where they've been really for the past 4 years now?
The entire Drew Brees era.
I get it, but this time it's like it's his last year. I'm just feeling like this is his last year. There's no more guaranteed money. He took a job with NBC. Everything's going to be different after this year.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you wonder if he has another great season, if he's going to want to walk away. And Tom Brady over in Tampa is like, no, I'm going to take all those counting stats records if you quit. These guys care about that stuff. I would.
No, you're right. You're
Those
right.
records are really important until Matthew Stafford breaks all of them.
We'll see.
I mean-
no, it's easy to say that all those records will be broken, but the
Of
longevity.
course they will. That's the
necessary-
way football works.
They matter to Breeze. It's a big part of his calling card. Brady, you would think it would matter a little less at this point.
He's got all the rings. Makes sense. Anybody else got one?
Well, Mark mentioned the Rams. I want to hear that.
I
Well, I
do like
just
always
think
hearing Mark on the Rams.
The Rams, to me, I mean, yeah, it wasn't a Super
Some would
Bowl
say Mark
hangover.
has a chip on his shoulder about the Rams.
No, not with the way they are right now, because I suddenly find them less everybody's favorite and more intriguing. They've really transformed the coaching staff and the roster, and I think Sean McVay suddenly is in sort of the second phase of his time there and has a big challenge. And I have a lot of questions about Jared Goff, not to the same degree I would about other guys, but you're in a crazy division where you're no longer the class of that division. You're in a top-heavy NFC. You went 9-7, missed the playoffs, kind of like fizzled out at the end there. They were 8-5 at one point. I think there's a bit of a chip on the shoulder there. I would say that you were the belle of the ball a year ago, not now.
What's interesting about the 2020 Rams, I think, is that Sean McVay just a couple of years ago was the next, offensive whiz kid genius, and the defense looks better than the offense to me. In fact, by far the two best players in the team are Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey.
But they have a totally, they lost some starters, and they have a totally new defensive coordinator. You're right. They have a lot to prove. I mean, they're rebuilt. They took over a bad franchise, and they won a lot of games. Even going 9-7, if that proves to be a down year, it isn't the worst down year ever. It's just they didn't expect that to be the step back year at all.
Right.
Like, this makes more sense as a step back year. He does have a lot of proof. I mean, I think about it like driving around the city. I mean, there was Todd Gurley billboards everywhere. There's Todd Gurley, for Subway. There's Jared Goff and all this stuff. I don't know if he's getting that Banana Republic money again. It's like they're not the bells of the ball as that they were hoping quite as much going into the new stadium.
There's been a lot of Goff dunking by, the football pundits out there this offseason after what was a down year. I wonder, the Rams are in a lot of trouble if he continues to regress this year. He's due $31 million and $27.5 million guaranteed salary in the next 2 seasons. His cap number jumps up over $30 million from 2022 to 2024. I mean, you want to talk about regrets? There's no way they give him that kind of deal again. Now they just have to hope it doesn't turn into a huge disaster if he kind of becomes a rich man's Mark Sanchez or something over the next year.
Oof. I'm not that concerned. I don't think they're that concerned.
He's paid like a superstar.
Right.
He is more what I'm saying.
Right, he is.
It's not exactly what you want, but I think even the way he played last year, man, his bad games were just awful. But I don't think he was much worse than an average starting quarterback. I don't think he was like a huge problem. The problem is, you want
drafted number 1 overall.
Right.
He better be better than the average starting quarterback.
Well, I don't think he was last year. I think he was about average or a little worse.
I guess my
But
measure
he just
of-
wasn't. He wasn't Mark Sanchez. So,
my measure. I said rich man's. My measure of a disaster is if he goes below average. So if he's not only a guy that's sitting at the table and he's not bringing things from the table, when he starts taking the salt off the table, the pepper, all of a sudden some forks and knives are missing, he's taking things off the table, then it's like, oh my God, what did we do? We just shipwrecked the franchise over this guy.
Right, and it also would point fingers at the Rams front office and coaching staff for misevaluating him. I mean, and paying him with the wrong evaluation.
I think they got some good young rookies on offense, but yeah, he's got to be better. I remember that Cowboys game, which Jared Goff was terrible in that. Well, I don't know if it was week 14, week 15, but it was kind of the moment where you're like, oh, the Rams are just not going to do it. And Goff was a huge part of the reason why.
How about that Ravens game? I mean, there were just too many instances of the Rams just not showing up last year, and they've got to turn that around.
Sometimes it feels like with being a team builder, and Les Snead is a great example because he's been in there forever now. It's like that old Batman thing, you die a hero or live long enough to become the villain. He was a guy that seemed like, this was not going to work out, and then he hit on some moves, and all of a sudden he was the face of like the young, industrious GM that teams would love to have connected to them, and now things have come back around, and he's facing a lot of pressure, I imagine. I think McVay has more – what do you think? Is it fair to say McVay has a lot more job security than Les Snead right now?
Yeah, but I think they both have pretty good job security. Because we're talking about this like there was a disaster. They won 9-7 last year. I mean, they weren't good, but let's see how this season goes, I guess.
Right. I mean,
even if they struggled,
yeah.
I think this is kind of their team this is their group for a while.
Well, I would say, though, McVay, if you want to say someone has more,
Sure.
I mean, McVay is sort of the centerpiece of the organization and a brilliant coach that you're not just going to let walk because of even one bad year.
I wonder if he's a potential guy, because this is going to be a tough year for them, and McVay will be really tested with all their losses and free agency and their salary cap issues and lack of draft picks and all that. If this year doesn't go well, I wonder if Peyton could end up being, or McVay could end up being a Sean Payton type down the line, where he is the czar of the whole organization, the Andy Reid type role. Right now, that is not the case, but maybe in the future. Mark, you did it. Vanity URL?
No, I don't know what's happened to those. It's just the NFL.com last name Sessler, and hope it's the last thing I wrote, or you're going to have to scroll down and look for it.
All right, there you go. Anything else? Anybody else have anything to add today?
One final
really.
thought. Yeah,
It's
people
Monday.
can if they missed it. By the way, it's on Game Pass. Our show, I think.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I heard.
Check it out.
I never
check out the Around the NFL
personally
broadcast.
verify it, but yeah.
Also, The Last Dance is getting better every week.
What a show.
Really enjoying it.
Fantastic.
I'm doing a new thing now where I watch the first one on Sunday, and then I save the second one.
Oh, I
Little
like
treat
that.
for
It's like a
myself.
Reese cup.
Little treat. And then it
Save
gives me
that
another
for
reason
later.
not to go on Twitter, because God knows it's good to get off Twitter every once in a while. A lot of takes always connected to Jordan in The Last Dance. All right. Stan Hansen signing off for Quiet Storm, the mailman, the old boss. Ricky Blue Blood Hollywood over in West Hollywood. Till Wednesday.